some spectacular iridescence in this altocumulus layer, combined with a little bit of cirrocumulus. This layer is at about minus 25 Celsius, up at about 20,000 feet. It's a mixture of very fine supercooled droplets and maybe some small ice crystals. They have a uniform size, and that's allowing optical interference to break up the light into different colors. Here's a look at the cloud patch producing that phenomenon. It's going to be this one right here. You can see it has a cirriform look, but if we go over to the cloud phase product, the blue is going to be supercooled droplets. The pink is going to be ice crystals, and you can see that this kind of falls right in between. And I think it may be supercooled droplets that may be causing that phenomenon. Our weather map for this afternoon shows a very powerful system in the northern plains. Surface low located in North Dakota with a series of waves all the way down through Utah and into Nevada. Looks like that cold front is clearing much of the Great Basin area. We can see snow coming down in Butte and Bozeman and all the way back into the Twin Falls area. Out on the plains itself, very warm, 50s and 60s. And you can see Denver there reporting 62 this afternoon and even 65 at Pueblo. And we have a very well-defined lee side trough that extends from Rapid City down to about Amarillo. And this can be a very favorable pattern for turbulence along the Front Range. And there we can see the Aviation Weather Center pilot reports. Got one severe report there in far southern Wyoming, and we're also looking at reports of turbulence deep into the Rockies itself. And there is what the graphical turbulence guidance indicates for all levels across the U.S. And of course we need to take a look up in Canada, since a lot of our air mass has come from that region. One of the things we want to do is to find the extent of Arctic air. We can see some stations with minus 30 and a couple more all the way down into southern Nunavut. There's another one right there. So this is going to be the core of the Arctic air mass itself. That may not be true through a vertical depth of the atmosphere. The thickness charts may show something a little bit different. So here's what the hemispheric thickness and pressure looks like. And it appears that the cold trough runs from northern Hudson Bay out across the Canadian high Arctic islands. And it appears that actually goes all the way across the Arctic ice pack. So that's a lot of cold air locked away in this region. Now if we run this forward, I want you to focus on these blue lines. Those are the thickness lines, and as I mentioned, where it's lowest, that indicates where the deepest, most intense cold air is. Now, what you're going to see when I run this forward, you're going to see that cold air spilling out behind this low up in the Dakotas. So here we go. See that cold air coming down into the Great Plains? And it pushes all the way down towards the Gulf Coast. And then eventually a piece of it moves into the northeastern U.S. It appears it's still quite cold up north around Christmas Day. But it's not making much progress southward because these thickness lines, they tend to run parallel to the upper level wind flow. And with that southwesterly wind impinging on the tail end of that cold air mass, that's going to keep it from going very far south. So we run that forward, and it appears another shot of cold air comes into the Great Lakes area around New Year's Eve, maybe a couple days before that, and the rest of it stays locked away in far northern Canada. And looks like a couple very weak pieces move into the U.S. itself. And going into the extended charts, we're 310 hours out, but it's putting a lot of cold air across the central and eastern U.S. You know, we'll see if that actually pans out. But that is actually a good chunk of cold air that managed to slip south. So we're going to watch that after New Year's. But overall, I don't see any intense Arctic air coming southward. So if the movement of air masses was not clear to you on that thickness chart, it's going to become very obvious when we look at the 850 millibar temperature. So the 850 millibar temperature, this is up at about 5,000 feet MSL, and it's a good way of kind of getting up off the surface and looking at the average low-level temperature field. So let's run this forward. Actually, before I do that, the 850 millibar low, that looks like it's up over Alberta, and 850 millibar warm front across the Dakotas, and the cold front down into Nevada. So that's pretty similar to what we had on the surface map. But you can see that cold air coming in behind in the Pacific Northwest. And we run that forward, and you can see cold air coming down into the Intermountain region, and an even more cold shot of air coming in from Saskatchewan and Manitoba into the northern plains. Temperatures, you see this purple here? That's going to correspond to, let me bring up the scale, about minus 15 to minus 20 Celsius. So that's quite cold. And we can look at the wind field and kind of guess that that cold air is going to be aimed mostly at the Midwest. Now, one other issue is that we are dumping a lot of cold air into the Great Basin region. This time of year, that means that there's the risk for Santa Ana wind conditions. Let me run this back actually about 6 hours. Now let's go 12 hours. Okay, so you can see the cold air coming down through southern Nevada with those north winds and the strong thermal gradient. So during the day on the 23rd, watch how that ends up in the Mojave Desert. And you see the northwest or the northeast winds there. See that 25 knot sustained wind around Death Valley. And that puts most of Southern California under this easterly flow. So there is going to be a risk of Santa Ana winds in that area as that cold air drains out. Let's zoom in and look at surface conditions. So we're looking at the wind and pressure field early on the 23rd, and you can see that cold air coming into Nevada there. Now, we run that forward 6 hours, so the cold air is starting to come into the Mojave Desert region, and looks like it's funneling through the passes there around Ontario and San Bernardino. Looks like 15 knots. That's not a whole lot, but I think there may be some risk there during the day on the 23rd. And you can see this corridor get set up around Oxnard, Van Nuys. I forgot what they call that area north of Burbank, but yeah, there is going to be some risk there. And you can see the pressure gradient right there. So there's definitely cold air dammed up against these mountains here. There's the Weather Service products for Riverside, California. North wind 10 to 15 miles an hour, gusts to 30. And you can see the discussion there about Santa Ana wind conditions. So with a very dry environment, there is going to be a pretty high fire risk in that region. Here's another look at all that, looking at the WRF ARW. I'm going to run that forward, starting with today, and watch the cold air from the blue shading up there, and the wind field in the Mojave Desert, which is going to be this region right here. And the Los Angeles Basin out through this region here. Now let's run that forward, and you'll see this event take shape. Warm conditions for later today. Then overnight, there's the overnight hours. Now the cold air is setting up in southern Nevada early tomorrow morning, and then it's already filtered into the Mojave Desert region by midday. You can see the cool conditions there in the deserts, the green shading, and the winds setting up through the passes. And then there's the day right there, sustained 20 knots around, I guess that'd be San Bernardino. I can see a 25 right there, and yeah, even some 30s out around, I guess that'd be Oxnard, Malibu, the Ventura area. So yeah, that definitely points to a Santa Ana wind event. And it's got sustained winds all the way through the nighttime hours. Now the utility companies are prepared for this. Southern California Edison is warning that up to 130,000 customers may be affected because of this. They're going to preemptively cut the power to prevent lines going down and sparking new fires. But hopefully things will be back to normal by the 24th as things settle down. All right, and back to our national map. So right now we're at the 23rd, midday hours. And looks like a strong Great Lakes system there early on Christmas Eve. And there comes that shot of cold air. Most of it you can see heading for Illinois, Wisconsin, and less cold air coming down to Texas and Arkansas. And we run that forward some more. And there it is. You can see that chunk. That's the coldest part of the air mass. Minus 20 Celsius at 850 over Indiana. And that's going to be on Christmas Day. So it's definitely going to be a cold one across that region. And due to air mass modification in a very unstable low-level profile, it's likely going to be kind of blustery and unsettled in that part of the country. So it'll feel a lot more like Christmas there than in other parts of the country. Now you can see that there's warm air coming in from the backside. So this is not a very large shot of cold air. It's more like a blob that's heading east. So yeah, we're going to have a warm front coming in. This is an 850 millibar warm front with a 850 millibar cold front. So yeah, that's a Alberta Clipper. And let's run that forward. The rest of the cold air heading up into the northeast on the 26th on Boxing Day. Quebec and Ontario getting some of that cold air. And that 850 millibar warm front looks like it's positioned about like that. Maybe a low or a triple point in that area around Illinois. And it looks like it's cooling down in the Pacific Northwest. So it looks like some more cold air working in. Let's run it up through the 27th. Definitely very, very cold across northern Ontario and Quebec. So this low in Iowa on the 27th may tap some of that. There's the 850 millibar front. And here's the next shot coming down. So again, that's going to impact the northwest, or I'm sorry, the Midwest and the northeastern U.S. This is a very classic La Nina type weather pattern. The northeast half of the country getting most of it, and the southwestern states being kind of mild. But there is cold air coming south. I don't know if you watched the western U.S., but that's a new cold front. That's on the 29th there. So that's going to be coming in from the west, and there's how the rest of that works out. Let me go back here. Okay, so you can see it emerging in the panhandles around the 30th, early on the 30th. Let me draw in those fronts. See that system coming together there, the low pressure area, cold air advection back across New Mexico. And then that'll move up into the Midwest. And this looks like a pretty decent shot of cold air coming in for New Year's Eve into Texas and Oklahoma. And here's another pool of cold air. I don't know if that's going to make it down. We're starting to get out of the range of the models, but it does look like the European model is starting to push that into the Midwest region on New Year's. 2021 coming into the model range there. 2021. Sounds like we're living in the future, doesn't it? Okay, and that's all for this edition of Forecast Lab. Thank you for joining. If you're not a supporter, please click this link by signing up on Patreon for just the cost of a cup of coffee every month. You'll get free access to the Monday videos. that'll help round out your forecast week, and you can take confidence that you're helping out this project and keeping it going into the coming year. And of course, that would be a great Christmas gift for us, so definitely consider that. And we're closing this out with some scenery from last night. We ran kind of late for the Monday supporter stream, so we got some nice sunset shots and scenery at nighttime. So enjoy. Take care, and we will talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.